Thank you. I'd like to call this meeting to order. I'll ask, welcome everyone here today. It's nice to have people in the audience. Quite often we go through meetings and never have anybody, so thank you for coming. I know we have some business to do tonight, so we'll get right at it. I'm going to ask if there's any disclosure of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Seeing none, I would like to ask, tonight we have had some complaints about people watching us on YouTube, watching the council meetings, and quite often people don't use the mics. So I would like to ask everyone here tonight to speak into the mic, speak up, and anybody using the podium back there, there is a mic back there, so if you don't mind speaking into it, so our viewing audience can hear us. So moving right along, I have a resolution moved by Councillor Dirksen, second by Councillor Gunson, that the minutes of the town of Minto, June 6, 2023 regular council meeting be approved. All in favor of that? That's carried. Thank you. And I have a resolution moved by Councillor Zimmerman, seconded by Councillor Elliott, that the town of Minto Council convene in committee of the whole. All in favor of that? That's carried. Thank you. So tonight we have two public meetings. First one is ZBA 2023-03. It's the Dobson residence, 5924 Wellington Road, 123. And this is site-specific industrial. And I will be the chair for this public meeting. So I'm going to call the public meeting to order and ask Clerk McRobb to ensure that any member of the public present is recorded on the attendance record. So, and I'm going to state, so if anybody here hasn't signed in, please do it now. So if a person, I'm going to state the following. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the town of Minto before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the town of Minto to the Ontario Land Tribunal, and the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of the appeal before the tribunal unless, in the opinion of the board, there are reasonable grounds to do so. So Clerk McRobb to state the municipal address and the legal description of the property, the purpose and effect of the application, and the date notices were sent. Clerk McRobb.
Thank you, Chair Turton. The property subject to the proposed amendment is located at Concession 1, Part Lot 25, with a municipal address of 5924 Wellington Road, 123, Palmerston. The subject property is approximately 30.06 hectare or 74.3 acres in size. The purpose and effect of the proposed amendment is to rezone the portion of the subject lands within the Palmerston urban area to permit industrial uses. Additional permitted uses are proposed on a portion of the property, including mini storage with sea cans and shipping containers, storage, sales, and rental of trucks, transport trailers, sea cans, and shipping containers. An existing single detached dwelling and storage building are proposed to remain. Additional relief may be considered at this meeting. The lands are currently zoned agriculture A1, site specific, natural environment NE, and highway commercial C2-32, site specific. The lands are currently designated industrial, green lands, and agriculture in the County of Wellington official plan. A severance application B7-22 has been approved with a condition which separates the agricultural land and wooded area, which are located outside of the Palmerston urban area, from the property. The retained lands, which are located within the Palmerston urban area, are subject to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. The notices were mailed to property owners within 400 feet or 120 meters of the subject property, as well as the applicable agencies, and posted on the subject property on May 31st, 2023. Reports and comments have been received from the planners in Wellington County, by Town of Minto staff, by a corridor management planner from the Ministry of Transportation, as well as neighboring landowners. And back to you, Chair Turton.
Okay, so moving right along, I'm going to ask our county planner, Matthew Daou, to provide comments regarding the proposed amendment to the comprehensive zoning bylaw number 0186.
Perfect, thank you. And through you, Chair. Before you today is a zoning bylaw amendment seeking to rezone the subject lands from site-specific agricultural A1 zone to site-specific commercial C2-32 zone, ultimately to holding site-specific M1, and ultimately there'll be a number given, and subsequently to amend the C2-32 zone. So the purpose of today's meeting is really to go over the proposal and to allow an opportunity for the community, residents, council to ask questions and seek additional information from the applicant and his consultants. So to provide a high-level overview of the background on these lands, they were part of a town-initiated official plan amendment, which essentially did a land swap between Palmerston, Harriston, and Clifford. The lands subject to the rezoning were brought into the urban center through that process and has been conditionally approved for severance in 2022. The subject lands are designated industrial in the county official plan and previously highlighted the zoning as well. The applicants has submitted a zone amendment and again, high level to permit transport, truck, and trailer sales and rentals, storage of trailers, sea cans, and shipping containers, and sales and rentals, and a mini storage facility. The draft bylaw also outlines requirements around buffering, berming, fencing, stacking of the trailers and containers, and a number of other items. So in terms of next steps, following the public meeting, staff will finalize a review of the proposal and the zoning bylaw. We will report back to council at a later date with the proposed revisions based on tonight's discussions. And an amending bylaw will be provided for council's consideration at that time. And with that said, I know the applicant's planning consultants are in attendance, and I imagine they prepared somewhat of a speech, so I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Okay, Matthew, thank you very much. And there will be time for questions. I'm going to ask Town of Minto's planning coordinator, Ashley Sawyer, to provide comments regarding the proposed amendment. Ashley, please.
Perfect, thank you. So I think Matt's covered it fairly well. As council's aware, the Dobsons run a family but local business that's been in operation for nearly 50 years. Currently, the business does operate out of two separate sites. So the main office is located on Main Street and the yard's on King Street. And the intention with purchasing this property is to consolidate the existing sites into one. When we did circulate the application, Maitland Valley and Source Water Protection noted no concerns. And then the MTO and Perth County generally noted no concerns with the zoning, and they would like to be involved at the site plan stage, which we were figuring anyways. So that, I think, covers it for me.
Okay, Ashley, thank you. Next up, we'll ask Scott Patterson, Patterson Planning Consultant, Inc., to provide comments regarding as well for the proposed amendment.
Perfect. Good evening, Council. As noted, my name is Scott Patterson with Patterson Planning Consultants. Here tonight on behalf of Dawson Brothers Enterprises and the zoning bylaw amendment before you for consideration. I do have a brief presentation for you, and I apologize for any overlap as I never know what municipal staff are going to say as part of their presentations. But next slide, please. So this is a 2020 aerial image from the Explore Wellington GIS system, just outlining the subject property. The area in blue is actually outside the settlement boundary. Those are the lands that are designated agricultural. They were subject to a consent application in 2022, which was granted, and we're in the midst of clearing the conditions to sever those lands from the overall land holdings. The area in red is within the settlement boundary, and those are the lands that are subject to the zoning bylaw amendment application, and they are roughly 16.7 hectares in size. Next slide, please. So as noted by staff, the zoning of the property outlined in red is A1 for the majority of the property, and there's a portion of the property fronting onto Wellington Road 123, which currently has a zoning of C2-32, which is a highway commercial zone. And all of the lands are designated industrial. Next slide, please. So the zoning bylaw amendment application is to implement the official plan. Our intent is to modify the existing C232 zoning to allow additional uses and to apply regulations, to rezone the area to be currently developed from A1 to a site-specific M1 zoning with specific uses and regulations as well, and to rezone the remainder of the property from A1 to an M1 zone with a holding provision. Next slide, please. So this is the development plan that was submitted with the application. Wellington Road 123 is on the right side of the screen and Highway 23 is at the bottom of the screen. The existing house and shed on site are to remain. No new buildings are to be developed at this time. The southern portion of the site is to be developed for the use by Dobson. The northern portion is to be developed with a swim facility, which you can see on the very left of the screen. That is a stormwater management facility which will service the development. But the bulk of the lands are to remain under agricultural production. And our friends at the MTO have said that we can maintain the access to Highway 23 so long as the agricultural use continues. But if any development were to occur, they're encouraging us to not have an access to Highway 23 and all access would be to Wellington Road 123. Next slide, please. So with regard to the actual zoning, this is an illustration of the development plan showing the existing house and the existing shed. The blue line with an arrow represents what is indicated in the draft zoning bylaw as a setback of 200 meters from Wellington Road 123. That is to have a height limit where essentially the storage containers and things can't be stacked from that limit towards Wellington Road 123. So that's 200 meters into the property. The red circle at the bottom of the image, that is a request from staff that we extend a berm in that area. So there was a noise study that was done in support of the project. That noise study recommended a 4-meter high berm along any residential area, particularly in that location. So the request from staff is to extend the berm along the entire property line. We've confirmed through our civil engineers that there is an abundance of topsoil on site. We have no concerns with constructing the berm. There'll be ample material to do that. And I believe Mr. Dobson intends to provide trees and other things on the berm as well. The rectangle on the front towards Wellington Road 123 just reflects a request in the zoning for a 10-foot wide landscape strip. We have no concerns with that. The blue heavier line at the top of the image is a request for a visual barrier, basically a 1.8 meter high wooden fence. The bylaw is in draft form. We would request council to consider the opportunity to, instead of applying or implementing a fence, to consider vegetation in that area, potentially a row of trees. And our other request is the purple on the screen where you see the two arrows going each way. That reflects roughly a 50-meter setback into the property. So as noted, the current bylaw suggests that a 200-meter setback be provided where containers can't be stacked more than one high. What we're suggesting for council's consideration is that from that line, which represents 50 meters into the property, ahead of that towards Wellington Road 123, we can have containers stacked one high. From the arrow going backwards from 50 to 200 meters, 2 high, and then beyond the 200 meters, basically 3 high or whatever's needed to accommodate the storage or sea cans. And lastly, the H on the left of the screen is basically representing the agricultural area that a holding provision is being proposed just to temporarily freeze those lands until development applications come forward and the form of development is known. So no development on that area is proposed other than the stormwater management facility. Next slide, please. And these are just representative illustrations of the sea cans that the Dobsons sell. The purpose of these images is just to show you the types of sea cans. There's many forms, there's many types. They have doors in different locations, different sides. The advantage of stacking them is that we can display them. If we're forced to put them all at a single level, it'll take up an exorbitant amount of land area just to show the various containers. Next slide, please. And again, just another illustration of the types of sea cans that are proposed, the different door configurations, and the need or request to actually stack them on site. And I think there's one more slide as well. Yeah, just an additional slide of the actual sea cans and the different configurations. Next slide. So as far as concluding comments, as noted, the proposal would seek to implement the official plan by applying an industrial zoning to the property with site-specific provisions to reflect the proposed use. As I noted, a noise study has been completed. and the recommendations are being implemented on site with the berm. Site-specific regulations in the zoning will structure how the site can be used and where various items can be placed. And with that, I think that concludes my presentation. I know Mr. Dobson is here tonight. He's scheduled to speak after me. I'm not sure if he's going to or not. But if there's any questions or concerns, we're both here to answer those from council and the public as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Scott. We'll have questions in a few minutes. So right now, I'm going to ask Mike, if you don't mind, if you want to speak in reference to our discussions tonight, you can address the mic if you want.
I think,
I think Mr. Patterson did a good job representing what we want, but as he said, on the berms, we plan on planting some trees. The trees we plan on planting are not little sticks. We have a tree farm that we're gonna be harvesting the trees out of. So it'll probably be 5 to 8 feet tall for most part, as long as we have enough, which we should. And the same thing with, as he said, the vegetation along the east side between the optometrist and our property. We've discussed about putting trees in there as well instead of a fence. So there's some trees in there that need to come down, so we'll get rid of those and plant some healthier trees.
Good. Thank you, Mike. So next on the list is visitors, Brian and Lori, Sherry and Corey, and Kathy. Who wants to go first? Is there questions on your behalf? Okay, so I forgot to say that if you don't mind when you go up, Brian, to introduce yourself, say who you are, and if you don't mind, thank you.
Hi, I'm Brian Zabel. My wife Lori and I live just off Highway 23, so 5217 Highway 23, and very close to the property, actually adjacent to the M1 hold, I guess, property. Okay. So this could have a huge impact on our property and lifestyle. We're concerned with industrial land being so close to our residents. Industrial land brings negative impacts such as noise, lights, pollution, obstruction of views, odors, dust, and increased traffic, as we've already noticed with the current industrial park. We'd like to know what will be done to mitigate any impact these factors may have on us, as well as how the decreased property values that living so close to industrial area will be addressed. We've enjoyed living there for 22, 23 years now of rural living. Lori and Sherry have been there their entire lives. It's quite a change for us. We've been there since the original industrial park, and we've seen firsthand the negative impacts that's had on us and the enjoyment of our property. Some of the things that I looked at there, and we just saw some of these plans basically on Friday, so I haven't had a whole lot of time to digest them, but definitely the berm would help with trees. One thing that we would ask for is that berm to come around, I guess would be Corey and Sherry's property, and follow on to Highway 23, as that will be industrial land 10 feet from one of our residences. The stacking of containers, to us, I think the current bylaw is no stacking of containers. We would like to see the 200 meter current bylaw be imposed from not only Wellington 123, but from Highway 23. And to have a limit on how high they can be stacked in the portion, I guess it would be to the north of Dobson's property. Lighting would be another thing. The current industrial park, there is a lot of glare on our property. So like companies should be using dark sky compliant lighting, so that would be a big ask for us. And then, hopefully just be able to review and work through some of these things with Mike and their business. But definitely at least from our point of view, there's big winners and losers in this. I think that the town and county wins in an increased tax base and development fees. Dobson's obviously can grow their business, consolidate things, but for the residential properties, it's a loss. It's plain and simple. It's a decrease in property values. So while other parties are gaining economically from this, we're losing. And I'd like everybody to keep that in mind and, let us know what's going to be done about that. We've seen noise studies and traffic studies, but there's been no study on what this does to our residential property values. It hasn't been taken into consideration yet. So we would like that to be taken into consideration. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Sherry, you and Corey? Okay, that's fine. Good. Okay. You all right then? Okay. Catherine?
Hi, I'm Catherine Alton, and I'm the owner of the optometry clinic adjacent to the proposed development. I will speak to for sure the suggestion from the planner of trees instead of a fence between our two properties, and I would thoroughly appreciate trees because I think that's just a much nicer and kind of more nature-focused property divide for us. So as Mike mentioned, that was a suggestion that he had, and I fully support that suggestion from being on the other side of the property or other side of his property. And as far as stacking containers based on what Mike and I have discussed, I don't know that I have, based on my property and what my property is used for on, my side of his property, I don't have a big opposition to stacking containers depending on what is, I guess, decided in terms of, the bylaws and that type of thing. So my business is there. It's not a full-time residence for me. So my concerns are obviously very different than maybe Lori and Sherry and their families would be. So I recognize their position as well, but just my business being beside, and if the containers are coming close to my property, I'm not opposed to it, but whatever is decided, I'm actually quite neutral on it. I'm not for or against, I'm just neutral and really quite content either way. So I just thought I'd mention that. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Is there anyone else that, I know that what we're trying to do here tonight is get out all the information. So if there's something that somebody has to say that hasn't been said, I would invite you to address the mic right now. So hearing nothing, I'm going to open it up to questions from the council. Councillor Elliott.
Mike, does your business go after 5 o'clock, or is like you a 9 to 5 noise thing, or will you work until 11 at night, or what's the story there?
In general, we work 8 to 5, Monday to Friday. There's the odd time that truck comes in later than that and we got to do something, but most of the time it's pretty quiet after 5.
So if a truck comes in, you'll drive it in, park it, and then leave it?
It depends what, we may have to unload it or something, but
Right.
it's very seldom. I wouldn't even guess how many times it would be.
So you'll be
Wouldn't be
noisy,
once a month, I don't think.
you'll be noisy from 8 to 5, and maybe even not that noisy, eh?
It's a parking lot, so it's not going to be terribly noisy. There's
Yeah.
not trucks roaring around every day, all day. It's, so.
Okay. Thanks, Mike.
Deputy Mayor Anderson, go ahead.
Just for my information, how high is a sea can and how high did they get stacked, or can they be stacked?
There's 2 sizes of sea cans in general, 8 foot 6 or 9'6". The stacking of sea cans on the plaque on the container says you can stack them 7 or 8 high. I don't have equipment to stack them that high. My forklift that I have, generally I stack them 2 high. If I really try, I could stack them 3 high, but I generally don't. Unless I want to make a display for marketing, advertising.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Counselor Gunson?
Thanks, Mayor Turton. Sorry, Mike. Brian he had asked about lighting. Do you plan on putting lighting back through there, or is it just gonna be lighting near the front near 123?
At this time, I have no plans for lighting at all,
So any street lights
except
in
what's
there?
existing.
Counselor Dirksen?
Thank you, Mayor Turton. Mike, I'm just wondering, when you purchased that property, was there any question about what you would be using it for?
No, I purchased it for this exact thing.
And was the seller aware of that? Like you
I
didn't
don't
keep
know.
any secrets about what you were going,
Nope.
what your plan was?
I got a random phone call about buying the property when I was in the middle of discussions with somebody else on a different property.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Counselor Potmitz?
Yes, through you, Chair Turton. Can we just flip up to the site plan view of that, Mr. Patterson's report? Yeah, there. So that area where it says M1 site specific container display area, is that the area you want to put, like, to stack the containers in?
Yes, that's would be where I, at this time, propose where I'm gonna display the containers, basically.
So is that the only area that you would stack them, or would you like to stack them higher throughout the whole site?
So behind the blue line, the north of the blue line, will be extra storage, so they will be stacked back there as well.
Would there be any consideration to not stacking them against the residential portions of the property, or are they about residential?
Yeah, so behind Emerald Coating, so beside Shisto's property, the plan is to put the mini storage in there with the containers, which is only going to be 1 high.
And just a comment, I don't have any issue with double stacking them in that area that at the front within the 200 meters. I mean, shipping containers are meant to be stacked, and they don't look out of place when you look at the pictures.
I could build a building about 40 feet high and put 3 inside stacked.
Point taken.
Other questions? Sorry, go ahead,
Sorry, what's
Counselor
the question,
Potmitz.
Chair? When you're looking at that plan there, it looks like we have a road lines coming out of industrial park that abuts this property. And on this view here, you have, it must be a stormwater collection area that runs back to your storm pond.
Correct, that's what the green,
Would there be any consideration to tying that property into a road allowance at some point in time, or leaving that as an option?
Sort of through you, Mayor Turton, the question is about the road connection, the potential to the existing industrial park.
Yeah.
Yes, township staff have made us very aware of that road connection. And that came about through the discussions with the MTO as well with regard to the limited access that we may have to Highway 23. So there is a potential to have that road connection for servicing and access through into the existing industrial park. It is shown on the plan right now. The intent is to have the drainage areas going through that area, but naturally when the rest of the lands are developed, that would be reconsidered. And the need for that access would be considered at that time.
Thank you.
Counselor Zimmerman?
I guess this is to you, Mike. I see on the report here, you've got a circle of the Zabel's property where the berm ends. Would you consider making that berm the whole width of that industrial area, just to make that a complete buffer?
Through you, Mayor Turton, that has been a consideration we've talked about. As I noted, we've done a calculation about the amount of topsoil on site. Our civil engineer says we've got an abundance of soil to make the berm. If there's abundance of soil, I believe, I don't want to commit Mike to something, but the intent is to extend the berm as far as we can around that property line. And naturally, there'd be more topsoil when the remainder of the property is developed as well. So I think it's easier to keep it on site rather than truck it off site. So yes, the easy answer is yes. If it's possible, we'll definitely extend the berm around the entire way out to Highway 23.
Other questions? I have a couple. I think, Mike, you told me that as it is right now, your main corporate office is going to stay downtown and you'll not be adding buildings as it is right now on the new property.
Yeah, correct. As of right now, the Main Street building operation is staying there. Some more of this truck sales is probably going to venture out to the property here for this, highway exposure, better display. But the office will be downtown. Potentially in the future, the house that's existing there may become an office. But at this time, we have no plans to do any building.
So presently, down on King Street beside the fire hall, there's no lockup. Weekends, people, you were telling me that people go in there and look at your equipment, the inventory number, the price, call you Monday morning, you know exactly what they're talking about. There's no plans for you to lock up off of 123?
No, there's no plan to put any gate or fencing off of the highway or 123 at this time, so.
So your plan is to make it gravel base. That's what we're talking with the topsoil. We'll push that all back, reuse it as a berm and put in gravel.
Correct.
Other questions? Okay. So, any rebuttals? Okay, so hearing none, I'm going to bring this public meeting to a close. Sorry, Matthew, pardon me. Go ahead.
Last second addition here right before we end. So I think staff, in terms of staff's direction, I've heard some comments around the berm as well as the tree line. For staff's perspective, in terms of bringing the future bylaw, if we can get direction on the applicant's ask for the 50 meters versus the 200 meters, delineating with the blue and the purple, in terms of, I believe that's associated with the stacking in that area. If staff can get direction from council on that point, it would certainly be helpful.
Okay,
So am I able to make a motion in that
no,
direction?
no. So,
Okay. So we can make a suggestion that we go back to staff?
Yes.
So my suggestion would be that we look at the 50 meter and we talk about extending the berm. Particularly if the sea cans aren't going to be stacked in that first little bit. I mean, you're talking a road and it's industrial land out there now, and industrial development is at the edge of every town. That's the reality nowadays. You can't have that industry in the middle of the town, so it has to be at the edges. And I think Mike's willing to work with us to keep it as reasonable as it is. I understand there's residences there as well, but to my way of thinking, this is a reasonable compromise to move forward with.
Councillor Podemits, go ahead.
Through you, Mayor Turton. I agree with the, we should make a recommendation to allow that, the stacking of containers in that 50 meters beyond the 200.
I can't hear you.
Yeah, my recommendation would be to amend or change the zoning bylaw to allow the stacking in the 50 meter. Beyond the 200 would be allow stacking of 3 high. Is that an option, or can you stack them 3 high? Okay. Is that something we should include in the zoning then?
Yeah, so that's, tonight it's information, and we're going to go back and have our staff. If you go to the mic, please, Brian.
Can anyone tell me why the current bylaw is 200 meters from the road?
CBO Terry?
Yeah,
Papers?
I can answer that, Brian. That was based on the previous site plan approval. That was the limitation of the development at that point and council's wish to not permit stacking within that front section. So that was a carryover from the previous site plan approval.
But it's also a bylaw on any M1 property in town, correct?
It was not. The height limitation was, Mike didn't have to rezone that C232 portion previously.
Right.
The meeting that you were at was for the site plan approval, and it was thrown into the site plan approval agreement, which remains unsigned. So it was a staff carryover from what council's perspective was during that process.
Okay, so where did the 200 meters come from?
So that was the extent of the previous site development. It only extended to the back of the C232. The proposed rezoning extends back even further. So where that blue line is on the screen, that was the site development limitation previously, and now it's going to that cutoff swale right beside the H. So I can go up and point if you want. Okay. All right, I'll go up here. So the previous site development was limited to this part here and didn't include, with the exception of a stormwater management pond, didn't include any development around the house. And there was no proposal for anything beyond. So this application has changed by rezoning this front part here for the site-specific industrial, slight modification to C232 provisions, and then rezoning the back part to the M1H. So that 200 meter limitation, as I mentioned, was a carryover from the previous site plan approval that dealt with that part.
Okay, I guess in just typical terms, the Minto bylaw for other M1 zoning, what is the bylaw on CCANs?
So I guess I can sit down. The current M1 zone does not permit CCANs. It does permit stacking of trailers and stuff like that. So the CCAN use is being added into it.
Okay. So what we're recommending now is CCAN usage, not only 1 high, but 3 high.
At the back.
So we're
portion.
going from 0 to 3.
At the back portion is what I'm suggesting, yes.
Okay. Only at the back portion.
Yeah, beyond the
Okay.
200, 3 high.
Okay.
Before that, just 2 high.
So Brian, all this is pure discussion points?
No.
Okay. Okay. We're all satisfied? One question, Terry. So one of the things Brian brought up was the residential property losing value. Is there anything that, I mean, have we done this before? I know that we have discussions and people bring that up. A lot of the times that's a discussion point. Is there anything that anybody that does anything like that?
There's no definitive study that I'm aware of that a person could do, whether a real estate agent, an appraiser, or not. So I don't know of what, Brian mentioned a study. I don't know what study we could request to establish an impact one way or the other on property values.
I could make that really quick.
Okay.
Would any of you like an industrial park 10 feet away from your residence? And how would that impact a property that you would purchase?
Yeah, that's a
It's
great
that
question. So I'm not sure if there is an answer for that, but we can certainly talk about it. Okay. Matthew, Terry, Ashley, we can go on to the next point then? All right. Okay, so I'm going to state that if you wish to be notified of the decision of the council of the town of Minto in respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment application, you must make a written request to the clerk of the town of Minto at 5941 Highway 89, Hairston, NOG 10, or by email at annaline@town.minto.on.ca. So no further comments. I'm going to adjourn this public meeting. So I appreciate all you guys coming out, voicing your opinions, and we'll move on from there. So you folks are welcome to stay as long as you want, but if you don't want to, now's the time. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Mike, you can go back to the party. Chelsea, you don't have to feel lonely sitting there, okay?
I can sit up with her if you want.
So we're moving into our second public meeting this evening. It's ZBA 2023-04, and it's Peterson at 9882 Wellington Road 3, and it's a kennel. So I'm going to act as the chair of this public meeting. I'm going to call the meeting to order, and Clerk McRobb is going to ensure that any member, we've went through this, everybody has signed, we've asked a couple times. So I'm going to state the following. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the town of Minto before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the town of Minto to the Ontario Land Tribunal, and the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of the appeal before the tribunal unless, in the opinion of the board, there are reasonable grounds to do so. So Clerk McRobb, would you go ahead and state the municipal address and legal description of the property, the purpose and effect of the application, and the date notices were sent?
Thank you, Chair Turton. The property subject to the proposed amendment is located on Concession 18, Part Lot 26, Registered Plan 61R10037, Part 1, with the municipal address of 9882 Wellington Road 3. The subject property is approximately 2.47 hectare or 6.10 acres in size. The purpose and effect of the proposed amendment is to rezone the subject lands to permit a dog kennel. The lands are currently zoned to Agriculture A and are occupied by a single detached dwelling, barn, and a drive shed. Additional relief may be considered at this meeting. The notices were mailed to the property owners within 400 feet or 120 meters of the subject property, as well as the applicable agencies, and posted on the subject property on May 18th, 2023. Reports and comments have been received from Senior Planner of the Wellington County, our Planning Coordinator for the Town of Minto, Environmental Planning Technician from SVCA, as well as 11 letters of support.
Thank you, Annaline. So next is our county planner, Matthew Daoud, to provide comments regarding the proposed amendment to the comprehensive zoning bylaw number 01-86. Welcome, Matthew.
Great, thank you. Through you, Chair, before you today is a zoning bylaw amendment seeking to rezone the subject lands from agricultural to agricultural site specific. The applicant has submitted a zone amendment to permit a kennel in an accessory structure. This application is before council today as kennels are prohibited in all zones within the Minto zoning bylaw. A conformity exercise was completed to ensure the proposed kennel is located beyond 150 meters from any adjacent dwelling or barn. Planning staff can confirm the proposed kennel is approximately 370 meters from the closest dwelling and 355 meters from the closest barn. However, planning staff do note that the kennel bylaw requires a minimum lot area of 10 acres, while the subject lands are approximately 6.10 acres. So the bylaw enforcement officer should be satisfied with the proposed size. And as part of the kennel bylaw, the proposal is subject to site plan control, where the finer grain details will be ironed out. And with that said, planning staff have no concerns with the application. Welcome any questions.
Thank you, Matthew. We'll move along to Ashley, the Town of Minto's Planning Coordinator. Thanks, Ashley.
Perfect, thank you. So Matt's covered it fairly well. I just wanted to add that Saugeen Valley noted no concerns, and town staff generally do not have concerns either. Terry will be bringing an exemption request for the kennel size as a staff report later this evening. And we did receive, as mentioned, 11 letters of support for this application, speaking to the quality of care that these animals receive. And our bylaw officer has also been out on site and did not note any concerns.
Okay, so we'll ask Chelsea Peterson, owner applicant, to provide comments regarding the proposal.
Do I press the buttons all the time? Oh, it's already. Good evening, I'm Chelsea Peterson. So as Ashley and I believe it was Matthew have already mentioned, they've details that I'm looking to rezone my property to allow for a kennel. They've done a good job preparing everything, but I just wanted to add some specifics about myself and my dogs and the way that they're raised, so you guys kind of have a bit of an idea of what we're doing at my place. My situation is definitely unique because my dogs are my life and they're my family. So I look at the town of Minto, and the town prides themselves on being the place where your family belongs. And my family just happens to be a little bit different because they have paws. So I wasn't going to talk about the letter yet, but you have it up already. I'm very, very transparent with how my dogs are raised, how my puppies are raised. So you could easily go on Facebook or see my website and see that they have birthday parties at the kitchen table. They are all house dogs. They all sleep in my bed. Actually, I have 2 king size beds put together. So it's not a traditional dog kennel. They're house dogs. They're my family. They really are. We do have some litters of puppies. So the puppies are raised in my house. I have one room dedicated to delivery of newborn puppies. And then when the puppies are older, my garage is heated, insulated, all that stuff, epoxy floors, so that they have more space to run and play. They're given, new toys all the time, including a slide when they're older. So they really live a good life. My dogs and all of the puppies have regular veterinary care at Heartland and, good deworming programs, all that sort of stuff. I do have a contract for the way that all of my puppies are sold, and my pups are pretty much just sold on referral or repeat customer basis. We're not really advertising because it's a small operation. My oldest dog is 13 years old, actually, so she is clearly not breeding. She's just a pet, among others, because most of my dogs are actually spayed or neutered. So. The letter really detailed some specifics as to the care that my dogs receive, some of my background, my experience, a little bit about their health testing and whatnot. But truthfully, that information can be found on my website too. So that's all there. Essentially, my life with dogs is maybe a little bit unconventional to some because it's different for sure, but it makes us happy. And the rezoning would basically allow my family to stay together. I want to be in compliance with the town of Minto's bylaws, which is why I've applied for this. And this is kind of the first step to making it all happen. So thank you.
No, thank you, Chelsea. I don't think we have anybody registered this evening to speak to the application. So we're going to move to the council opportunity to question Chelsea. Any questions? Councillor Dirksen.
I guess this is just to help me understand. So this portion of the meeting is, I guess this question for Terry.
Terry, okay.
So this portion of the meeting is for what? And then what is the second portion when we're talking about the area?
So you totally are going to kill or spoil my report coming forward. So
Oh, I'm
I'll speed
sorry.
things up. No, so this is a public meeting for the rezoning component. As Matt mentioned, within the contents of the bylaw itself, there is a minimum 10-acre property size for a kennel. But there are exemption provisions that have been brought into that bylaw to allow for reductions on a couple of items.
Which is the second part.
Which is the second
So
part.
right now, we're just talking about whether this should be zoned.
Yes, we
Not worrying
couldn't,
about the area.
we
area.
couldn't combine the two reports because we're dealing with a planning issue and then
Okay.
we're dealing with a bylaw issue when I get to chat in front of you.
Okay, I won't spoil it anymore. Thank you for that. I didn't realize they were two kind of separate things, so, all right, thank you.
Any other questions? Counselor Elliott?
Just quick a comment. You love those dogs. How do you let them go? I don't think I could do that.
So my adult dogs, obviously, they're my whole world. So they definitely don't go anywhere. As far as the puppies go, it's hard. There's one in every litter that I want to keep, but the reality is I can't keep them all. Otherwise, I would really be a crazy dog lady. So
Other questions? Deputy Mayor Anderson?
Hi there. So how many dogs, we read through the letters and it sounds like there's a number between 4 and 8 dogs that you keep. And what would your maximum number of dogs be there when you have pups?
so right now I do have 8 adult dogs and then 7 puppies. That's 1 litter of puppies.
Okay.
Now the puppies are gone at 8 weeks of age, so they're not staying for any long duration. And it will sort of depend if a female were to have 6 puppies, it's fewer. If she has 10, it could be a little bit more, but yeah.
So is there a reason, how long have you been there with the dogs? Is there a reason why you haven't applied for a license earlier?
So honestly, I did not know that I needed this. I guess my assumption was living out in the country, it didn't really matter. I mean, I look at it and I go, oh, people can have 10 goats and it's not a problem. So I can totally appreciate that is my oversight, not knowing that I should be applying for this. But as soon as it was brought to my attention by bylaw, I was like, okay, all right, what do we have to do? I emailed Ashley like right away and we got kind of the ball rolling. And I think one of my emails to Terry said, how quickly can we make this work? So I've basically tried to get this going as quickly as we can so it can be in compliance.
So how long have you been in your location?
I've lived there for 7 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Need to watch the videos on
Yes.
YouTube. And find out about bylaws. Okay,
Not
thank you.
everybody watches those.
Well, I don't, that's for sure. Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
I just have one.
Counselor Johnson, go ahead.
This is for Terry. So if all the dogs are living in the house and it's a kennel application, how do we inspect the pens and all that stuff? Or is it just we're going to the house to make sure that it's clean and there's a spot for the dogs? It's not.
Yes,
much pens and all
this,
that?
the way Chelsea operates her kennel is not a traditional kennel with penning and individual dog runs and stuff like that. This is not the first kennel that we've had with the same situation. I know we had one that no longer operates. We do have one on the 3rd line that runs the same. So little different format. We're looking at the house condition and make sure there's not excrement everywhere and all stuff like that. If it was a traditional kennel, we're looking at kennel sizes to make sure it's adequate for the dog. That are being housed there, but this is, definitely different. It's more of, let's see how she
Make sure-
operates it.
Make sure the
and-
bed sheets are washed.
Exactly. Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks.
No other questions? Okay, thank you, Chelsea. We're going to move on to the next. If you wish to be notified of the decision of the council, the town of Minto, in request to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment application, you must make a written request to the clerk of the town of Minto at 5941 Highway 89, Hairston, NOG 1ZO, or by email at annaline@town.minto.on.ca. And if there's no further questions, then I'm going to adjourn this public meeting. So thank you. Thank you very much. So we don't have any delegations. Public question period. Chelsea, we usually have a public question period. If there's somebody in here that wants to throw a question at us, why? We're moving along to the correspondence, moved by Councillor Potnovich, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that the council receive the correspondence as information. We've got 4 items. We do have a letter of appreciation there. We have 2, actually. A letter of appreciation from the Hawks Nest sponsorship and Jim and Rita Measures from Clifford. If there's, I'm going to call the question. If there's nothing else, all in favor of that motion? That's carried. Thank you very much. So we have some committee minutes for approval, and we'll start with Belinda on the Economic and Development and Planning Committee minutes for June the 8th. So Chelsea, Matthew, thank you for coming. You're always welcome here. Chelsea, if you want to stay, that's fine. If you don't, okay.
Won't be much.
Sorry, Belinda, go ahead.
That's okay. Thank you, Mayor Turton. So as you can see, I was not in attendance at this meeting, but I will review the minutes with you. We are happy to be back to doing our corporate call visits again. And this visit was to WC Smith Wholesale. And I believe everyone that attended really enjoyed the tour and the swag. Bill and Tina always do a great job when we go up to visit, and I think everyone enjoyed it. We're looking forward to going to see TrustCore in September and invite all of council to join us on that tour. Charlene unfortunately became ill right before the meeting, so she wasn't able to be there, but she did send the workforce update, so that is attached. I won't go through it, but you'll notice the unemployment rate for the rural region that we're a part of is down to 4.7, which is less than the provincial average of 4.9. And our participation rate is pretty close to 70%, which is really good. So there's some interesting information in Charlene's report, but I won't take the time to go through that. There was some other things in here. James from the County of Wellington is now going to be coming to our meetings and providing county updates. So you'll see in there the RideWell program is our rural transit program, and it's continuing to grow, which is nice to see. And they're at a point that they're going to have to get some more cars to service the demand, which is great. We're also working with the county on a lot of workforce stuff. So job fairs, newcomer things, the housing side of stuff with making sure people know about accessory dwelling units. So James went through all of that. And I think, yep, Gord was there and made note that as part of our strat plan stuff coming up, the economic development, community development strategy will be part of that. And this committee will play a big role in that. So he kind of gave them a heads up around that. And the last thing I wanted to make note of is the events. So we had a successful Clifford Carnival event. We were able to finally have the official opening. And this Saturday is the Railway Fest at the Railway Museum. So looking forward to that. I think that is the highlights of the meeting.
Questions for Belinda? It's great to see the RideWell. I mean, we are, in order to keep that going, the more people that use it, the better. So people that don't know about the RideWell program, they can go onto the Wellington County site and find out more about it, right, Councillor Anderson? It's important that we use it, or it's possible that we will lose it, right? So the more, again, the more people that know about it. So let's pass the word around. No other questions? Sorry, go ahead.
I just have a
Deputy
question
Mayor.
about that RideWell program. Are people able to book it without a computer yet, or is it only online booking?
I believe that they do have support through not community services. It's Center Wellington Resource Center. There is a way to book it by calling one of the organizations, and they will book it because you need a credit card, and they have ways around that now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because when it first started, it was online and a credit card. And I'm going, most of the people who need this service don't have access to
Yeah,
either
I
of
think
those
it's the
things, so-
Community Resource Center.
All right, perfect. That's good.
Okay, so our recommendation is moved by Councillor Gunson, second by Councillor Zimmerman, that the council receive the Economic Development and Planning Committee minutes of June 28th, 2023 for information, approve any recommendations contained therein. And I'm a little bit backwards here, but I apologize. If there's no further questions, all in favor of the motion? That's carried. Thank you very much. So we're moving into the BD 2023-002, the dog licensing bylaw exemption. Chelsea Peterson, 9882 Wellington Road 3. And we'll ask our CBO, Mr. Terry Kuipers, to present this report.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor Anderson. wow.
Well.
I quit.
Just leave.
Mayor Turton.
It's fine.
Sorry, I was coming up with a joke at the same time and it failed. apparently. So as the public meeting is still fresh in your memory from 4 minutes ago, the timing of these two applications and the reports does seem awkward. A kennel license can't be obtained unless both are approved, so the rezoning application as well as this exemption request. So as previously mentioned, being that Ashley's report or the rezoning application is a planning application, we couldn't or didn't feel it was appropriate to combine the two, the planning and bylaw reports together. So it is awkward, but I figured this would be the most appropriate way to go. The dog licensing bylaw contains many provisions within it, and one which we're addressing here tonight deals with the minimum lot size of a property to operate a kennel on. The intent of this provision is to mitigate land use conflicts, to ensure that there's sufficient distance on a property for a kennel to be established and stay away from neighboring receptors, be it livestock facilities or residential dwelling units, for the purpose of mitigating or worrying about or decreasing the potential of multiple dogs barking and upsetting the neighbors. As Matt mentioned, the property far exceeds the kind of 150 meters that we go by. The other additional item that we'd look at, or sort of the intent with the 10 acres, is to provide sufficient room for dogs to exercise. Our bylaw does allow up to 25 dogs in a kennel. So that's kind of how we geared the property size to it. As Ms. Peterson is proposing less dogs than that, and her property is, less than the 10 acres. We did review both the noise as well as the exercise potential and had no concerns with her property. Her property does contain a fenced-in dog run in behind her house. If she does acquire more dogs, there is the potential of expanding that fenced-in run. There's plenty of room there, so staff didn't have any concerns. And yeah, the only thing, as I mentioned, staff has no concerns with council granting this exemption. We do annual inspections of kennel facilities. So typically in the spring at renewal time, we do schedule one inspection with the kennel operator. But then we also do a random inspection throughout the year. Tricky part with how Chelsea operates her kennel is it's within a dwelling unit. We can't just walk up and walk into her house. So fortunately, this type of kennel, we do need to schedule both. But we could do drop-ins, evenings, weekends, or whatever if she's home and grants us access to it. But as mentioned in the public meeting, staff has no concerns on the operation of the kennel at this point. If there's any questions, I can field them.
Okay, so we have a recommendation moved by Councillor Elliott, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that the Council of Town of Minto receives report BD 2023-002 for a dog licensing bylaw exemption request by Chelsea Peterson for information, and that the Council of Town of Minto grants a lot area exemption for bylaw 2019-39 permitting a kennel to be established on a 2.5 hectare 6.18 acres parcel located at 9882 Wellington Road 3, whereas a minimum lot area of 4.04 hectares or 10 acres is required. Questions? We've went through quite a few questions, so if there is no more questions, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? All in favor? That's carried. Thank
Are
you.
you okay with that, or
Oh, sure.
do
No,
you want it?
no, we're good. Okay, saying all that, we might have a visitor for you, a new visitor for you, Chelsea, here. So we have a new shared law enforcement officer position, and I'm going to ask Terry Kuipers, our CBO, to introduce Mike.
Thank
Sorry,
you,
Rick.
Mayor Turton. I got it right this time. I read your name tag just. So In reviewing my reports, I really should have done this one first and then the exemption after. Then I could have got out of presenting it and writing the report, but I guess I'm too late for that. No, seriously, Town of Minto has had a part-time bylaw enforcement officer for many years now. The position originally started as part-time building, bylaw. Other part of that person's duty was a building inspector. With Cam Forbes on board, that changed to part-time bylaw and then part-time fire prevention. Due to the migration of a lot of outside persons from larger centers to Minto, and how grumpy people have gotten with COVID, the number of complaints that we received has gone up drastically, as well as the complexity of those complaints. We're finding people are less tolerant with both their neighbors as well as their neighboring properties, how tidy they are. So the workload increase. We've seen a large demand for that. The fire department has also seen a demand for staffing due to additional responsibilities put on to them from provincial legislation. An example would be registering all the buildings in Minto or the non-res buildings in Minto with construction types and post signage on them and that sort of thing. So due to both of the departments' workload increase, our acting CAO has had discussions with the CAO from Mapleton about a potential full-time shared bylaw enforcement positions between the two municipalities. So they have worked out a shared servicing plan. The major components of that plan is the person will be housed out of Mapleton. So they'll have a desk there. We do have a hotel desk in the office here that Rick, who will introduce you in a minute, would have the opportunity to operate out of. Mapleton is proposing on providing the necessary work equipment. So laptop, cell phone, all that fun stuff, with Minto paying half. Mapleton is proposing to provide Rick with a work vehicle. Sharing the cost of a vehicle is not practical due to replacement of the vehicle, all that fun stuff. So we're proposing to pay mileage for the Mapleton vehicle once it's operating in Minto. And Minto will be paying for half of Rick's salary, benefits, training expenses, that sort of thing. The shared service agreement, we're still trying to finalize some of the operational details. So I didn't feel it appropriate to include it in this report or attach it to. With the operational components of it still outstanding, that's something that staff usually works out to, opposed to the big items like salary costs and cost, or how essentially it's functioning from a high level. So I am recommending that you allow the mayor and clerk to enter into the agreement if once it's finalized. If there are any significant changes within it from what I've listed, I will bring a separate report forward for it. Unless you want to see the agreement before it's signed. So Mapleton did post the job, and Rick Hobbelink was hired for the position. So Rick comes from Woolwich, previously Cambridge, and then previous to that, the OSPCA. So I just wanted to drag Rick here so that you can see his face. And I don't know if you want to stand up and say anything about yourself.
Yeah, sure, I can make a little introduction. Oh, perfect. So my name is Rick Hobbelink. Like he was saying earlier, that I've got 5 years experience with animal control as well as animal cruelty investigations, and I worked in Wellington County, so I'm familiar with the area as well. And yeah, I also bring experience from the city of Cambridge bylaw enforcement, as well as Woolwich Township bylaw enforcement and property standards. So yeah, I'm looking forward to hopefully share my knowledge and yeah, start working in Minto and Mapleton together.
So the only other thing I'd like to add, and that's a key component for me, is enforcement style. So I did have a lengthy discussion with Rick. Minto's enforcement style historically has been compliance-based. So you're working with the persons to gain compliance and then use orders, fines, legal action as a last resort, which that is totally Rick's MO as well. That's how he operates. So I'm definitely looking forward to, to working with Rick and continuing on with our bylaw enforcement.
Thank you. The recommendation is moved by Councillor Potnowitz, seconded by Councillor Dirksen, that the Council of Town of Minto receives report BD 2023-003 for a shared bylaw enforcement officer for information and passes a bylaw in open session to appoint Hendrik Hobelink as a bylaw enforcement officer, property standards officer, and a peace officer to the Town of Minto. And that the Council of the Town of Minto directs the mayor and the clerk to sign all necessary documents to be entered into a shared service agreement for the bylaw enforcement officer with the Township of Mapleton. Questions? Do we need Rick to go back to the mic? I guess we'll decide. Go ahead, Councillor Elliott.
Oh, is that, oh, I thought it was you. Go ahead. Sure. No, I can't.
The question I had was, it blew me away for a minute, but the question I had was, it'll be written complaints, I assume, that you'll need to be able to go to any complaint, whether it be AMO, whether it be property standards or whatever, you'll need a written complaint. Will an email suffice as a written complaint?
So our standard of operation will remain the same. So people have the option of submitting a complaint via our website portal. They can mail us in a letter if they choose to. They can fax us in a letter if they choose to, or an email will suffice as well.
So quite often I get the complaint from the public over the telephone, and then in their behalf, I can write an email and that complaint would be fine.
You could, but I really don't recommend it. The reason is if it goes to court, you're going to have to go to court to testify with the nature of that complaint. They're best to reach out to us directly, then we can ask follow-up questions and trying to figure out more of the situation before we enter into it. So
if they put in a written complaint, if it goes to court, then they would have to go to court.
That's correct. Yep.
And the biggest problem I have when people call me is they don't want their name involved, but they want to deal with the issue. And sometimes the issue is bad, but they're afraid to do anything about it. So how can we get around that?
And I don't disagree with that. Historically, when people complain about a property, 9 times out of 10, they know who it is regardless. We never disclose who it is until a point it gets to court. And when it gets to court, you're going to be asked who it is, and they're going to have to testify as well. So unfortunately, when you start going down the legal road, they can't hide regardless. Like, I know we want to protect them and we do our best when we're on site. As I mentioned, we don't say who it is, allude to who it is. But unfortunately, when it gets that far, then they're going to be called out regardless.
So if it's me, then I'm the guy that complains.
Yep.
Okay, I can do that. I can send an email and stand for myself then.
If you're testifying to the nature of the situation and what occurred, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Potnowitz.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Turton. One comment I had, I like the idea of the written complaints. It kind of eliminates the frivolous ones where somebody just wants to complain about something. The other question I had is, how many days a week would Rick be working in Minto?
So the game plan is it's going to be flexible based on that specific week. Overall, it's going to be a 50-50 split. But there could be instances where, like with the property standards cleanup, you could be there for a few days. So the game plan's 50-50, but it's going to be, Rick's going to have to balance his time to both of us. Okay. The only bylaw, that we don't do complaint basis, and I deal with them specifically, are complaints against the building bylaw. So building without permits and all that fun stuff, I need to maintain that within my wheelhouse.
Deputy Mayor Anderson.
Yes, thank you. So if they're only complaint driven, if you're the bylaw officer and you drive by this property that is always just a disaster, the weeds are overgrown, there's vehicles, there's this, there's that. Do we stop in there even, like if the neighbors just don't complain because they figure nothing will happen, so they don't bother and they don't want to make enemies of the neighbor? What happens there? Does somebody have to lodge a complaint?
So the reason why we do a complaint basis only is situations where if there's an abandoned vehicle on a property, we stop in, we make them remove it, but we don't see the other 10 down the road. Their defense in court is, why is the big bad municipality picking on me when all these other situations are still ongoing?
Okay. So there does have to be a complaint submitted.
If we feel the need to take action on a property, which we do on the rare basis, we can.
Yeah, because there's a couple of properties that are just notoriously, sure, we all know where they are.
I've
Just go,
already
"Oh my
given Rick a
goodness."
heads up on one he's going to be dealing with on our behalf.
Okay, yeah, because it's just an ongoing eyesore and carries on and on and on.
CAO, just to follow up on that, we are not we aren't a proactive bylaw state. Like having Rick is great, and this is going to be a huge help, but we still only have him part-time, 2.5 days a week. So
Right.
just that's out there that we're complaint based only. We are, we would have to up staff significantly to go out and be proactive to drive around at that. So, which I know I just want to get that out for the public as well, that we are
Yeah.
complaint driven, not proactively driving around looking for stuff.
Right.
So.
I just wondered, there's some that are obvious to anybody who travels around the town. And just wonder what the base would be, but I understand that they're supposed to be complaint driven.
Councillor Dirksen.
Thank you, Mayor Turton. So just a couple of things. The first is complaint driven, yes, but there are some things like dog kennels, for instance, that are routinely, and the hens are the other thing I would think about. The
Correct.
backyard hens, and there might be something else, I don't know, but anyways, so those are not complaint driven, those are,
Those are licensing driven.
yes.
So
okay.
as both of those need an annual license, that's what triggers
That's what
those
triggers those.
inspections
Okay.
versus an investigation on a property standards issue.
Okay, all right, perfect. And then the other thing is just a simple math question. So I'm sure Rick is amazing, but so before we had a half-time bylaw enforcement officer in one municipality. Now we have a full-time bylaw enforcement officer in 2 municipalities. So that means half, we still have the same half person, right?
Correct. Yes.
So how are we, and our guy before was getting behind and not being able to cover it all because of all those reasons you mentioned. So I guess I'm sitting here saying, is Rick gonna need some help beyond this? Or are we gonna, I'm assuming we'll start this way and then we'll see where it goes, but.
That I'm not anticipating needing more than part-time. I don't think it's going to be to a point where we're getting to 3/4 time to full-time. I hope not. If there's instances where things are getting significantly behind and they're major items, I'm still appointed as bylaw enforcement. Dave Wilson is as well, and Cam is going to maintain his bylaw status as well. So there will be backup. Nice thing with Cam in-house is there's something happen right now, boom, he can go out. Being we still have persons appointed as that, we still have that. If we need to go out because of something serious right now, we still have that opportunity, so.
Okay, that sounds great. And I feel that Rick will be well supported then in that way because we have so many people in-house that can back them up too.
Yep.
So that's
Yep.
great. Thank you.
And to further that, sorry, Councilor Dirksen, to further that through you, Mayor
Go
Turton.
ahead, sir.
Having, like, with Terry being fully involved in planning and that so much now and that, but having Cam still available, we'll be having like backup. So if Rick gets into a situation, we have backup here in place, ready to go to help him out as well. So
Perfect.
to back that up. So those plans are all there, but having somebody deal with it, because a lot of what Terry talked about briefly, but a lot of complaints now are very involved. It's not just write orders or deal with it. It's a continuous process when you're trying to get compliance. There's mental health issues, there's financial issues. There's a lot that goes into this now, and a lot of agencies are now getting involved in a lot of this. So
it's very, very time consuming. So having somebody that's just bylaw being able to dedicate that and know the resources to bring along with them on that is going to be huge for us. So
Great, thanks.
Councillor Elliott.
One more question. Thank you for indulging me. How, do you have to be living in the town of Minto to make a complaint?
You do not.
Okay.
I have had the odd case where it's an external complaint. I think the only couple I've dealt with is because they used to be Minto residents and I pissed them off and they wanted me to do extra work here is what generated the complaint. We do weigh the complaint on, so the way that bylaw enforcement works is we receive the complaint, we review the complaint, look into the property, but then assess it based on what the bylaw provisions are. So just because Councillor Gunson says a property is, a dive, there's stuff piled everywhere. Well, it could be that that's what the nature of the business is. There's other circumstances. So just because a person complains that there is a situation going on doesn't mean we're throwing an order on the property based on what they wrote up. We still need to assess it and act based on the provisions of the bylaw.
Is there a time limit, and will you get back to the complainant?
I do not believe we have a written policy. It depends on workload. We historically have not let them drag on forever. But are we capable of getting back to people within 5 minutes or a day? Sometimes we can't.
No, I just wonder, would you get back to them and say, we are looking into this? Thank you for the complaint.
Typically, we let them know, but we're very limited as to what we can tell them. Like if Councillor Podnewitz submits a complaint about a derelict vehicle, we could tell them we're working on it, but we can't tell them what we're doing as it's still under investigation. So we are very limited in terms of what we can disclose, even to the complaint.
But I know that they've always taken care of any complaint that I had. I have no problem with that, or people that I know of, they've done that very well. But nobody got back to them to say that they're working on it, and they did do it, but it just.
And the biggest thing that I've seen over the years is that people don't understand the process. So enforcing bylaws is one thing, enforcing property standards is different. Our normal protocol is, and again, it's situational dependent, is we go out there, we take a look at the property. Usually we have a chat to the person, we send them out an informal notice and give them a window to comply. So this is working with them. This is what you need to do by this certain time. If they don't do it, then we have to follow up with the order process, which then we've got mandated timelines we have to give them, plus appeal period times. So grass cutting, for instance, we go down that road, informal complaint, usually 2 weeks, get it done. After that, now it's 19 more days before we can go in and do it.
Sure.
So as a person who doesn't know the process and we can't advise them of what's happening in the background, we haven't touched it for a month and a bit. So, and that's the tricky part from the external perspective.
Okay, thank you very much.
Other questions? So this is in the 2023 budget, so we don't have to worry about that. It's a new person in an existing position.
Correct. Yeah.
So not a whole lot has changed here.
Correct.
So if there's no other questions, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? That's carried. Welcome aboard, Rick. So this is basically making it official. Rick is a part-time employee with the town of Minto. Perfect. Okay, so we're into announcements. I'm going to start with Councillor Dirksen, if you don't mind.
Thank you, Mary Turton. I just had one announcement, an upcoming event on July the 1st with a rain date for July 2nd. Hopefully it's nice on the 1st. And that is at the Crossroads Life Church in Harriston. They are providing fireworks for the community again. They get quite a bang out of doing that, I guess. It is a huge undertaking though. And they do a really good job. So the festivities start at 6 and they go till 10 or dark when the fireworks start. It's usually like getting up towards a half hour of fireworks. So it's quite impressive. And I think I've told, oh, there's bouncy castles at the 6 o'clock. There's bouncy castles and food and music. And then it ends with fireworks. So just want everybody to keep that in mind and put your pets inside. Thank you. I think that was all.
Thank you, Councillor Dirksen. Councillor Zimmerman.
Yeah, well, we have the annual Clifford Truck Show coming on July 1st, Friday and July 1st, I believe. And I know some of us councilors will be helping the Rotary Club serving meals. Over to that.
And it's bigger and better than ever. So, thank you.
I have nothing.
Councillor Elliott?
Nope, good, thanks.
Councillor Potnitz? Councillor Gunson?
Minto minor hockey registration is open until June 30th. I know it's crazy.
What?
There's no ice in. The reason we do it is because we need to know how many players we have and how many teams to register before August. So I know it sounds silly, but if you wait until after June 30th, there's a $200 late fee. Or if you know somebody wants to sign up, tell them to please contact registration people.
Thank you.
It's going to get cold out.
It will get cold out someday soon. So I'd just like to make sure everybody's aware of this Thursday. We are having, the MRI committee is having a golf tournament. So we thank that committee, and I know they have a lot of money. We have a lot of money to raise for this MRI machine and the housing and whatever you want to call it, but this is a good first step. Second thing I would like to announce is the Solidarity March, which is at 6:30 on the 29th of June. Sorry, let me get that again. I might be wrong. Gosh, I'm gonna learn how to run this thing.
Belinda could probably jump
Yes,
in and help
Belinda,
out.
thank you.
Yes, it's not a march or a walk. It's a little bit different this time. It is a solidarity event, just bringing the community together. There's been a lot of hatred, unfortunately. So we are bringing the community together, standing united against hate, basically. A few years ago, we did a march and it was very successful. A lot of people came out in a short period of time. This time it's a little bit different. We're having African tribal dancers. We are having our Syrian community do some dancing. We have Akram from the County Settlement Services. Ahmad's doing the Syrian dancing, but Akram is doing a talk about the hijab. We have Colleen from the county and the Indigenous group there doing a smudging and Indigenous land acknowledgement. We have a bunch of community groups that are going to be there just sharing resources, like sidewalk chalk and all food, like different foods and drinks. And it's just going to be a positive event to hopefully bring the community together to stand united against hate.
Thank you, Belinda. So it is-
6:30 till 8:30, June 28th.
Correct, perfect. The Harrison Community Center. Great.
If I could just, as with the truck show that Councilor Zimmerman talked about, the Clifford firefighters will be doing a breakfast both the Saturday, July 1st and Sunday, July 2nd. So before you go to help the Rotary Club serve, go for breakfast first. So firefighters would be more than happy to cook you breakfast both days.
Thank you. If there's nothing else, then we'll move along here. We have a resolution moved by Councillor Elliott, second by Councillor Gunson, that the Committee of the Whole convene into regular council. All in favor of that motion? That's carried. Thank you. Any notices of motion? Hearing none. The next resolution moved by Deputy Mayor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Dirksen, that the Council of the Town of Minto ratifies the motions made in Committee of the Whole. All in favor of that? That's carried. Thank you. Bylaws. Resolution moved by Councillor Zimmerman, seconded by Councillor Potnevitz, that bylaws 2023-042 and 2023-043 be read a first, second, and third time and passed in open council, sealed with the seal of the corporation. All in favor of that motion? That's carried. Confirmatory bylaw moved by Councillor Gunson, seconded by Mayor Anderson. Bless you. Thank you, excuse me. That bylaw 2023-044, confirm actions of the council, corporation of the town of Minto, respecting a meeting held June 20th, 2023, be read a first, second, and third time and passed in open council and sealed with the seal of the corporation. All in favor of that motion? That's carried. Thank you. Adjournment. I want to thank everybody. It was a very productive meeting. I appreciate all the support from our staff and our council, and welcome, Rick. Adjournment resolution moved by Councillor Dirksen, seconded by Councillor Potnovitz. The council of the town of Minto adjourn the meeting again at the call of the mayor. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you.